Greetings, everyone. This is Payman Lorenzo, your host, your friend, your coach. Today, I have another great guest for you, my new good friend, Carol. Wow, we connected about a week ago. We had a wonderful chat. We were connected through a common friend of ours, Corey Poirier. I had him on my podcast a few months ago. Amazing guy. And yeah, so we had a conversation last week, I believe. And wow, as soon as I started talking, I could feel the energy because she's doing a lot of great things. She's connected directly to source. She gets downloads and channeling directly from the source. She's doing a lot of good things. She has already written 3 books. We're going to talk about them. One of them has a beautiful, wonderful name that really says it all, which is uh, Wake the Fuck Up. That's the name of the book. I love it. She already has, as a podcaster, I'm happy to see that she doesn't have just one, but 2 podcasts. That's phenomenal. So we'll talk about that. And yeah, as I said, she's connected to source. She can do reading on people by just tuning into the energy field, even if they're on the other side of the world. So that's amazing. And I really love her tagline, which is she's an archeologist of the mind, body, and soul. So we have a lot that we can unpack. So without any further ado, Carol, welcome to the show, my friend.
Yeah, so I just want to thank you first for having me as a guest in your podcast. It's a blessing, and it's nice to be able to kind of vibe and be on the same wavelength. So thank you so much for it.
Pleasure's all mine. It's always this is what this podcast is about, to bring in great people with beautiful, inspiring messages so that together we can inspire others to do good. This is what it's all about. So, for people who don't know you, tell us, who's Carol as a person, human being? We're going to talk about your business and all the good stuff after, but as a person, as a human being, who's Carol?
See, I don't really describe myself as with a couple of letters, because I think I think a lot of times people identify with the combination of letters as that's who they are. So essentially, I kind of describe myself as a spiritual being having a human experience here on this earth, and then I grow and evolve and develop based on the experiences that God and Source provides for me, as well as the experiences that I choose for myself. And I would define myself as a multifaceted expression exhibitionist, meaning that I express all aspects of myself, whether that be the light, the darkness, the happy, the sad, the sexual, the confident, the shy, and all those other things that encompass. And my purpose of why I'm here on this world is to raise human consciousness, to help people realize their greatest and fullest potential by operating as their true authentic self. And I do that by what I create and what I speak and how I live my life.
Wow, amazing. So we have a lot to cover. I told you this, I knew this was going to be good, but I think this is not going to be just good. It's going to be memorable. So I can't wait till we get started.
Yeah.
First of all, I'd like to ask a series of rapid fire questions to further get to know you as a person. Ready?
Sure. Yeah.
What makes you happy?
God and life and my inner happiness.
Love that. What makes you smile?
The sunshine.
Beautiful. What makes your soul come alive?
When I see the disparities and injustices in the world, and knowing that I was created to help alleviate that.
Now, on the other side of the spectrum, what makes you sad and angry?
I think what makes me sad and angry is the state of the world, as it currently is. When I see racism, people killing each other, and just the hate that exists among other people. I think that's what kind of makes me sad and angry. But then I'm not one to harbor in that. I use that as a fuel to be able to create things to bypass that. Because one of my favorite quotes is by George Carlin. He says, you cannot, fighting for peace is just like fucking for virginity. It just doesn't work. So you can't fight with peace. You have to become peace and kind of share and teach others how to be peaceful.
I love that. That's a very powerful quote. Absolutely. Now, what scares you?
What scares me? I don't know if anything really scares me. I think there's certain fear and everything like that, but it's more excitement, I would say. excitement to be able to uncover an aspect of me that I've never known before. Because it's when I get those feelings, it's not, I'm never stumped that I won't do it. It's like, oh, who I'm going to be at the end of that journey. So it's these certain emotions that I feel, but it's more productive than it is counterintuitive.
I see. Now, what do you say is your number one personal superpower?
To love.
Mm, beautiful. Now, speaking of love, do you love traveling?
I love traveling. Yes.
All right. Now, what was the very first trip you took?
My very first trip I took, well, I mean, the very first trip I took, it was the Philippines, but I would say,
Oh,
yeah, one of the most memorable ones, like, is I think I was just after graduating high school, my friend and I went to Barbados, and it was one of the most amazing experiences that I had as a young adult traveling without my parents outside this country. So it was really amazing.
wow.
It was just something so amazing and free, and the synchronicities of, meeting someone on the plane, connecting with them, and then them taking us on an island tour and kind of being in this small shack and going to a real like gospel church. So, it was so much fun and laughter and singing that I felt like the whole church was going to break down. It was amazing.
Beautiful. You mentioned the Philippines. That's a place that's really special for me because I spent a lot of time there. Are you from the
Mm.
Philippines?
Uh, I'm Filipino, and I was born in
Nice.
Canada, though. Yeah.
Which part of the Philippines?
My mom is from Calangkang, I think Santa Cruz, Calangkang, and my dad is from Ilocos.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I've been to one of those, and I've traveled a bit in the Philippines, but I absolutely loved my time there. Can't wait to go back. Been there many times, especially when I was living in Asia. So, wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, I had some good memories there too. I
Mm.
I just want to share this. I remember, going back to my mom's home, and I was very young. I think it was 10 or 11, and people don't know how much of a culture shock it is when you live in Canada to go to, what you would say a third world country. Because when I was in the province, like, I had to walk over a fucking mountain to pump my own water for a shower. You know what I mean? And people, and with a toilet, you don't actually, there's no flushing. You have to pour water in the toilet for, what I mean, everything to flush down. So, having to experience that, I was so grateful that my mom
Oh,
came to
yes.
Canada. Yeah.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Mm.
Also, one thing I always remember and cherish about the Philippines is the friendliness of the people I met there. Absolutely beyond
Yes.
friendly. You know,
Mm.
they call Thailand the land of smiles, but I think Philippines is also as much, if not bigger, of a land of smiles than Thailand.
Mm.
For me, the people and yeah, the hospitality. Even the people may not have much, but they have something that's invaluable, which is happiness. And they're
Mm.
very willing to share it with anyone, even if they don't know you. Just a smile, very friendly to talk to, and I love that. I miss that. I can't wait
Yeah.
to go back. Yeah. Wow. Okay. Now, let me take you now down a different type of traveling, down memory line. Go back to when you were a kid, a young girl. When we're
Mm.
kids, people around us, family, parents, teachers, they always ask us, so, Carol, what do you want to become when you grow up? What was your answer back then as a young girl?
I I don't think I really had any idea of what I wanted my future to be as a young girl, like say 5 or 6 years old. But when I was writing the book that I'm currently finishing right now, You as the Object of Study, I did save a journal entry from when I was 16. And it was really crazy for me to realize my thought process about then, because at that age at 16, I felt like I really uncovered what true success was. Because what I wrote down is that I want peace and love in my heart, and that God will, I hope God will guide me, in that direction, and that I want to improve myself so I can help other people. When I read this, I'm like, was that really me? But then at the same time, to be able to write that, to not to say I wanted, all this money, material wealth, and all the other stuff. Not to say that doesn't matter, but that wasn't my objective. My objective was to have peace and love in my heart. And I would say honestly that I've achieved that. So I think that's one of the most amazing things to discover through my writings as a younger person.
Beautiful.
Mm.
Now, stay back to when you were a young girl. What was your relationship growing up with school? Did you love school or did you hate school?
Oh, I hated school, to be honest. I was a menace. I was a menace because when I grew up in my household, my dad was very physically abusive. So I didn't really know how to, it wasn't, we weren't shown any affection and love and that kind of stuff. So I never really knew how to express myself. So I only knew how to express myself through my fists. So you can imagine I was pretty a menace, kicked out of class and everything like that. I only turned my life around when I was in grade 11, when I kind of went in a new friend group. So it was very challenging upbringing.
Mhm.
Mm.
Did you have any subject in class that you enjoyed more than others?
Mm. I would say in high school, I would say at the time it was math,
Okay.
because it was my math teacher. Her name was Miss Ottawa. She made the biggest impact in my life, because if it wasn't for her, I would never have graduated on time. I told her I was kind of behind, and meaning I've been kicked out of all the classes. So I only really started doing math in grade 11, really, like seriously. So I had to take grade 10, 11, and 12 pre-calculus math in order to graduate on time. So she spent morning, lunch, and after school. And I worked hard to kind of complete everything. So I think that's would probably my most favorite subject because of that.
Okay. And was there any subject you could not stand at all?
Oh, computer science, and physics, and some science. But there's only me and like I said, me and my teachers back then. We had like yelling and swearing matches because of
Oh, really?
the
Wow.
student I was. So a lot of people wouldn't believe that if I would tell them that these days. But yeah.
Well, okay. That's interesting. Now,
Mhm.
what was your very first job?
My very first job, I was actually very young. I think grade no, I think it was 9 or 10 or 11. I worked as a at the Boys and Girls Club picking up garbage.
Oh,
That was my
wow.
first job. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Now, let's move forward. Let's talk about your path from the moment you left school to now. How would you describe your path? Would you say it was pretty much straightforward once you're into one lane, smooth sailing forward? Was it more like a turns and twists and like a roller coaster?
I would say it was very tumultuous, like a storm, or more so a shit storm.
Tell us more about it.
Yeah. Well, I think, how I would say it is that when you want big things in life, I believe that you're tested. And there's this thing that I read when I was actually in prison, and it was a quote by um, Ivana Janzant, and it says that the best students get the hardest tests. And that's not in regards to scholastic endeavors, that's in regards to life experiences. So I think essentially what I want to do and accomplish in this lifetime, I believe I had to go through all those tumultuous experiences to be tested is with what you want to accomplish. Can you really stand that in that position and hold the responsibility? And I think since I was able to break through and persevere no matter what has happened to me, I believe I proved to myself that I can do whatever I want and can accomplish that, because I've been through so much and I still can wake up smiling, with love and peace in my heart, and not wanting to turn into a bad person. If anything, I've become more of a beautiful person inside and out because of my hardship.
Absolutely. You
Mm.
know, the hardships, we all have our fair share of hardships, dramas, dark times, even tragedies. Sure, at the time they hurt a lot, but then they become our story. They help us become who we're meant to be. They become our story. Then our story becomes our gift. And then that gift becomes our responsibility to share it with the world through whatever means, whether it's through podcasting, books, drawing, singing, dancing, whatever way it's best for you to share your gift. That's the way to do it. So you
Yeah. and
mentioned
and
that. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
sorry. I just wanted to mention in regards to tumultuous time,
Mhm.
just to give some people context, being in toxic relationship, wanting to take my own life, almost dying from cancer from the doctor was telling me, severe depression, severe anxiety, going through a legal battle, going to prison and out, so losing everything only to realize I had everything. So just a bit of like a context of what that tumultuous time was like. Yeah.
Wow, can imagine. Now, that's a great segue for what I want to ask you now is, there's a saying that says, change your story, change your life. And by story, I mean what we tell ourselves in our head all day long. So when you're at the darkest of your times, whether it was in prison, whether it was in your legal battles or medical issues, whatever, how did you change your story to change your life? Did you do it through the help of friends, family, relatives, mentors, books, videos? Tell us a process that you, Carol, used to change your story in order to change your life when you were at your darkest.
Yes, I would say that I would have to kind of give a little bit of backstory on that, because I think the foundation of my ability to handle hardship and adversity in my life was the ability to meditate for the last 12 years, to consciously and consistently make myself an object of study, and essentially learning from every specific experience that I've went through in my life, whether that was good and bad. And also the understanding, there's a concept that I wrote in my book called We All Have a Morgan Freeman. So what that means is that for many of you who do not know who Morgan Freeman is, he's like a famous American actor who narrates movies. And when you realize through meditation, I realized there's always this voice kind of, narrating my whole life, like that's a car, that's an orange, this is a laptop, that's payment, all these other things. And when you can realize that you are and realize that voice in your mind, then you can actually separate yourself from that voice, and you realize that you're not your mind, you're not your feelings, your emotion, you're not even that body. And what you are is the awareness of your experiences. So in that aspect, when I became the observer, the one experiencing my experience, that's what let me be able to handle all my hard times, because it was something happening to Carol Banayos, this human being. But then I was I was objectively seeing everything, like I had an overview, you know what I mean? And then since I had that degree of separation, not to say that I didn't have any internal turmoil, I did, but I think it's that understanding that I was the observer of everything that allowed me to prevail everything that I was going through.
Imagine. Wow. You mentioned meditation. When did you start meditating?
12 years ago.
Okay. What made you start meditating? Was that someone that, inspired you? You just said, you know what, let me give this a try.
I was following my intuitive nature. Like I read my first book that I believe opened the door to my spiritual development journey was a book by Ekaart Tolle, A New Earth, Awakening to Your Life Purpose. And there was a quote in there that I use I use it all the time. It's one of my most favorite. He said that life will give you whatever experience is necessary for the evolution of your consciousness. And so when those internal things activated my being, I think I just naturally went down the path of wanting to try meditation. So first starting off 5 minutes a day, 10 minutes a day, to half an hour, to hours a day. And at that time, I really didn't know, but that was foundational for me to be able to handle my time in prison, because before they take you to the actual prison, you're locked in this concrete room for 10 hours, and I was in there on 3 separate occasions. And because I was able to practice meditation instead of banging my head on the fucking wall, I was able to sit in meditation for 6 or 7 hours, because I knew that, physically I was in prison, but my mind wasn't. So that's why meditation and sitting in silence and self-reflection is so important.
When listening to your very powerful stories, a thought came to mind. Call it channeling, call it whatever, is that you said while you were sitting in that prison, maybe your body was imprisoned, but that experience perhaps also allowed your mind to be freed at the same time.
Yes. And I think the reason why that's so important, that I want to elaborate that a bit more, is because you cannot teach an experience. My soul brother, Jonathan, mentioned that to me, because a lot of people can say that you have strength, you have courage, you have a positive, strong mindset. But how do you actually really know that you have all that stuff once, until you're actually in that experience. You can read all the fuck you want. You can definitely do that. But do
Sure.
you actually have the capacity to really say that you have that? And I think
Absolutely.
during that experience, all my hard times allowed me to be like, yes, I read that stuff, but I lived it and I actually embody and have the capacity to be strong, be courageous, and still, have peace inside my heart.
Absolutely.
Mm.
You know, I was never religious, but I always believed in God. And since the start of the pandemic, I've had a spiritual awakening. So
Mm.
the previous version of me before my awakening, when something bad happened to me, and I did have my more than fair share of very dark times, I would always ask the wrong question, which was, why me? What did I do to deserve this? Why? And play the victim. And that would create a self-fulfilling vicious circle from which it was difficult to get out. But since I've had my spiritual awakening, I've learned the power of asking. I've learned the power of questions, because question can be very powerful. Now I'm asking a
Mm.
different set of questions, especially two questions. One, doesn't matter what it is, even if it's the passing of someone that is very close, because that happened to me as well this past year with the passing of my father. And it was
Mm.
my spiritual
Sorry to hear
awakening that
about
allowed
that.
me, thank you. That's what allowed me to overcome that. And now the question I ask myself is, what is this trying to teach me? What is a
Mhm.
lesson for me to learn from this? So you looking back at all of the very difficult times that you went through, now looking back at them in retrospect from a spiritual eye, what would you say was the lesson and from those that what were they trying to teach you?
Mm. One would be that my life happened for me and not to me,
Mhm.
and that it allowed me to make myself an object of study. And the third thing is it allowed me to unfold myself to myself. And I think that's the most amazing thing, because we live in this this world right now. I think we talked about it before, in regards to people moving towards pleasure rather than pain. And I think when you always try to focus on turning towards pleasure, you miss out on those fundamental aspects that makes you a great person. And how you deal with your challenges, it is a difference between being good or being a great person. And that's being able to kind of turn towards it rather than away from it. Because the pain is where real change happens. The pain is where you ignite things inside of you that you never knew existed. So I think people need, like, there's an amazing quote by, Arnold Schwarzenegger. By now you'll probably tell it, I love quotes, but he says, you got to love the pain that makes you a champion. And I loved the pain that made me a champion.
Absolutely, that resonates well with me because, again, as part of my awakening, I've got to understand the deeper meaning of life. And one of those is that this life, this planet, is a school for us to learn lessons. And because I love eating, I compare life to a wonderful, beautiful, delicious 5-star Michelin restaurant for us to try all kinds of dishes. And by dishes, I mean experiences. I've tried a lot of things. So, and it's only through actually being there, living it, that you really learn what it means. Because we all can see in videos and books what it is to be in jail until you actually are there physically. We all know
Yeah.
what it means to run out of money. I mean, we see it in the movies, but you only understand what it is when you're actually going through it. We all hear about people, for example, making thousands of dollars a day, but you only get to see it when actually going through that. So by going through all of that, minus I haven't been to jail yet, and I have no plan of going there. But the other
No,
things
you don't
I've
want to
been,
go there.
the other things I've done that. I've run out of money, and yet at the same time, before that and after that, I've made thousands in a day, because it's a journey. It's a buffet. It's for us to experience all of that. So now, again, looking back at all of the very dark time that you went through, would you say that now, from the eye of a spirituality on it, would you say those were blessing in disguise and gifts for you to grow and to become the wise person that you're meant to be?
Yeah, I would absolutely say it was a privilege, because a lot of people say, oh, it's selfish to, work on yourself. It's selfish to, put yourself first. But at the end of the day, that's the most important thing you can do, is to make yourself invest in yourself, because you're the best investment that anyone can ever make. People invest in stocks and bonds and real estate and all this fucking other shit. but you are the person, the main character that needs to be invested upon. So I think it's an absolute privilege. I think it's an absolute blessing, because in that I was able to discover things that bring me internal happiness, joy, and peace and happiness that's not dependent on anything external outside of me. And I think people chase all these certain things to feel that, but I don't need that to feel that internally. And I think that's the best gift that God or my life has provided for me and given me.
So now looking back at all of those challenges, all those beautiful lessons that you've learned through that, what do you think is the purpose, the mission of your life, of this in this lifetime?
Yes, I would like to kind of share a little story, and I
Please.
think it really. So I was on YouTube, right? And every time on YouTube, I always saw like Oprah and this guy named Thich Nhat Hanh, right? And I'm like, what the fuck? Why does this keep on going on my feed? And then, second, third, you know what I mean, fourth, and then finally the fifth time, I decided to watch this interview, right? And so they're both
Was it
of
the
them
same interview all the time?
Yeah.
Oh wow!
But I
It
always
was a
saw
message
it.
from the universe. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm like, hey, what the fuck is this? Okay, finally, I clicked on it. And then so Thich Nhat Hanh and Oprah were talking, and then he mentioned this word, bodhisattva.
Wow.
I've never heard that word ever in my entire life. But something happened is that I broke down with such emotion. Like it's even making me emotional right now to even say the word and embody it. It just made me cry. And then when I looked it up, it was kind of, it's a person who has the ability to reach nirvana or enlightenment, but doesn't, because they come back to help reduce the suffering of humanity. And yeah, it's getting me emotional, because I think that is why I went through everything that I went through. And I think that is my purpose in life, to help people reduce their human suffering, because I've been through so much. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. That's really powerful indeed. Wow. Now let's move forward. Let's talk about something more happier. Tell us about the beautiful impact you're having on the planet and the world. Tell us about your business. Tell us about all the good, beautiful things you're doing.
Well, I think the biggest and most beautiful thing that I was doing now is completing my book called You as an Object of Study, a way to reduce your human suffering. And actually that idea was actually spoken to me in prison by my guides and by God and source. Like I was standing in my jail cell, and all of a sudden I heard this voice speak to me, and it says, "You as an object of study." And I was prompted right away to sit on my bottom bunk and start writing. And then I lost that list for some reason, but it was only afterwards that I realized the great depth of that, which I did in my entire life, or last 12 years, was to make myself an object of study, and then in turn help other people do the same with my experiences, so they can see, so many years that everybody spent in education, but no one has taught us to love ourselves, or no one taught us how to study ourselves, or no one has taught us to deal with our emotions, or how to develop the capacity to be a strong, beautiful being inside and out. So, and writing that book, it encapsulates, everything that I went through, to be able to transmit that to other people and say that this is important. If you want success and love and everything amazing in your life, you and only you are responsible for that, no one else. And I think, we put our power, give our power to other people outside of us. And when you do that, and you allow other people to think for you, then you allow other people to puppeteer your life for you. And you have to have that power, that willpower, to say, no, this is what I want. This is what I deserve in life. And you only can do that when you make yourself an object of study.
I love that. Wow, that's really powerful. That is so true, because our instinct, that's what society, parents, teachers, school always teach us, is always seek advice externally to some kind of authority, whether it's teachers, whatever, boss, God forbid, the government, church, whatever. But instead, what we need to do is look within. We have all the information, all the wisdom within us, because we can tap into our soul, just like we have Wi-Fi all around us. All you need to do, we don't see it. All you need to do is just know the right network and the password. There's something around us, which is the universal wisdom called the Akashic record. Some of us can access that by just knowing just like a Wi-Fi. I like to call it like the galactic Wi-Fi. It's all around us. You can't see it. You just need to know the right network and the right password, meaning the right mindset, the right frequency, and you get access to it. And once you get that, just like the Wi-Fi, once you log into your internet, you have access to all the knowledge in the world. But within this, you have access to all of the wisdom of the entire universe from eons and eons and times. So again, the solution is look within. And I wish that society and schools and even parents would encourage us more to look within. Sure, it's good to have external, knowledge and guidance, especially from those that are more, say, wiser, older than us. But ultimately, they should be telling us more. Look within.
Yeah, and I think, when you talk about the Akashic records, another thing that I do offer one-on-one readings, because in the beginning, I am an archaeologist of mind, body, and soul. So what that means is I can dive in deep into a being without having known them or heard them, and uncover their trauma when it happened, how it's holding them back in life, even things that they're not even aware of. And in addition, to understand and uncover their genius. And I think a lot of people are struggling and they don't know what's what or what's holding them back. And I can actually pinpoint it. And, I have open access to the Akashic records, and it's not even that, their past lives and people that come through. And so essentially I can see someone, but I see through them. They can't hide from me. And it's a very scary thing for, people to experience, because how can they really comprehend that someone like me can, or this vessel can actually see through them? But I think that is a very beautiful thing that I've been gifted to be able to offer people.
That's amazing. Were you born with those skills, or did you start, honing in on those skills, in your life over the years?
I believe that I've always had these built-in capabilities of being able to have this foresight. But I believe it didn't really uncover and flourish until I was able to rid myself of all of my past traumas, my limiting beliefs, and all those other things. Because when you have all those things operating in you, how can you really be present for someone in front of you when you're constantly thinking, how am I looking like? Or what should I speak to be like? Or, how am I being perceived? No, none of that is there, because I can be present for someone, see them, validate them, create a space, a safe place for them, and love and care for them. And I think everyone has this capacity. I believe everyone does. It's just the ability to kind of rid yourself from stuff. So how can you be a clear vessel from source when you have all this shit, blocking yourself from really uncovering the light and love that exists within you? Because, you're saying the galactic guides, or, the records, but inside ourselves, we are, Russell H. Conwell, he coined, each man is their own university. So when you think that each man is their own university, when you think of an actual university, how many degrees, how many courses, how much knowledge exists out there? That's the same amount of knowledge, even more, that exists in our being when we're able to tap into that.
Absolutely. Wow. This is powerful. I love that. I'm happy that we're recording this. I wanted to ask a question, but I just lost the train of my thoughts. But yeah. Wow. So you said you do also Akashic records and all that. And you said you connect to source. You're getting, are you getting channeling from source and your guides as well?
Yes, I believe it comes from Galactic guides, source, the infinite intelligence. I believe that, and tapping into that person's higher being, their soul, their experiences, because it's not just about Akashic records. I think it's everything, because I can see someone, but I see through them. And the thing is, there's no actual tried and true method that I follow that happens, because it's different with every person that I meet. Granted, it should be, because each person is unique in their own right. So it's just something that naturally happens. And there's things that I get that are really gruesome and disgusting to talk about, but I can't stop it. And I can't deny it, because that person that I'm meeting with, that's the reason why our cross have passed, that we're attracted to each other, to uncover those aspects so they can, express what has been repressed to start their own healing process, because you can't change what you're not aware of.
Absolutely. And we all get those very dark, negative, and nasty thoughts, all of us. Can't tell you how many times just sitting with someone, talking to someone, I have those very nasty thoughts, that come to your mind. And but of course, we're not gonna act on them, but it makes you reflect. Why am I getting those thoughts? Even though your nature at the base is a pretty peaceful, or just not inclined to do any of those violent things, but you still get those things. Do you have any thought as to why even people that are not even physically, I mean, violent or negative, may have those thoughts flash in their mind from time to time?
Well, if we are kind of looking at everything in totality, we're connected to the collective unconscious. So, and then if you take that a bit further, the programming that exists in this world, you know what I mean? You look at the news and social media, they kind of indoctrinate you to think this way about yourself. If you don't look this way, you're not worthy enough, or if you don't get this job or car or whatever, you know what I mean, that you're not validated, or you're not important. So I think when you take all of those into considerations, they are not really you. They're just thoughts and emotions that pass by. It's only if when you identify with that, then maybe you can say, okay, maybe I'm this negative person. But I think in totality, you are not any of those things. You can be the person that's aware of it. And I think the really important thing is to mention is that all these emotions are great. Whether it's bad or good, because they're all meant to teach you a lesson. And once you learn that lesson, then you can release it. I kind of look at all these emotions coming into my being in temple as visitors, not permanent residences. So when you're able to look at it in that respect, then it comes to you, and this too shall pass.
Absolutely. At the start of this podcast, you mentioned something that I fully believe in as well, which is we are, eternal beings having a spiritual, a temporary physical experience.
Mm.
So when we have those, and at the soul level, we all, I mean, this is a school of life for us to experience as many roles, as many experiences as possible. All of us have had lives where we're both, victims and the villain, every conceivable, position, role, we've played that. So sometimes and I always wonder, sometimes when I'm sitting, just doing my thing, or just talking to someone, just having normal conversation, I have those nasty, dark thoughts coming to me. Do you think those could be some flashbacks from some past lives as well?
Yeah, for me, actually, they're showing it was your past life as a knight.
Mm.
You're in this metal that metal knight armor, or that so it was really a dark path for you, and you're really um vicious. Yeah, so that's so that's what they're showing me in regards to when you're past.
Mhm. You mentioned that you're the archaeologist of the soul and mind. You told us a little bit what that entails. Tell us more. What exactly do you do? How do you help people? Tell us about the structure of your program and how you help people with what you're doing.
Well, like I said, it's pretty fluid. There's no real
Mhm.
structure to it. It's different with whoever I meet, because everyone is going through different things. But at the crux of it, everyone is going through hard times
Mhm.
and happy times. But I think when I'm able to meet with an individual, then their being will show me everything. Their energy will show me everything. Their source will show me everything. And it's through that investigative process and being able to interpret all the signs that are given to me, that I'm able to convey to that individual. And a lot of the time people break down and cry, because it is a very overwhelming at times. But I think people who are ready for the truth, because the truth hurts sometimes, and really ready to start the healing process, I think then and only then they're really able to book a one-on-one with me, and to be finally able to work work on their shit.
You have an ideal avatar of the person you can help the most?
I believe the ideal avatar is someone who's actually willing to hear the truth and do the work. And I think that the age that I'm getting is anywhere from like 25 to 45 and up, an entrepreneur or beginner entrepreneur. But I think anyone who has always questioned, what is holding them back and not quite know why they are getting vicious cycles of anxiety, depression, why they always hit like a brick wall. And yeah, so I would say that. And also spiritually minded and open. Yeah.
So are you getting most of your clients, would you say they're mostly men or women?
It's a mixture,
Okay.
actually. It's a mixture. Yeah.
So there's no majority?
I would say the majority is men, actually.
Oh, really? Interesting.
Yeah. Mm.
Okay. Wow. So I know we're currently in a phase of, global spiritual awakening, because as tragic as the pandemic may have been, we all needed that. And to use one of I love the way you mentioned saying sometimes that we needed, and that's one way also like to talk about the pandemic in that way, is that we needed that as a human species to wake us the fuck up, all of us, to really reflect on what really matters. So from you being so connected to source, are you saying any trend as to whether it's mostly men or women were were awakening the fastest or the most?
I would say, oh, what are they showing me here? They're showing me like younger men, actually, younger
Oh, wow.
men that are awakening, and showing me ages of like 20, 25, 26 and up. And then also older males in their 40s. Yeah. And also, yeah, women as well. But women in their late 30s. No, yeah, mid to late 30s. Yeah.
And do you think awakening would be different for a man versus for a woman?
Yes, because men and women identify with certain things.
Sure.
There's when people are in their lives that they live right now, they identify with certain roles. Like men are kind of more masculine, women are more feminine, or men don't express themselves, or they want to be prestigious and compete, and women are made to like stay home and be married, have kids. So I think it's all when they're able to disidentify with who they thought they were, that they will allow the awakening to happen. Because when you think about this phrase, you always hear this, I've always been this way. So if you've always been this way, then you'll always be that way until you want to be otherwise.
Makes sense. Now, you mentioned that you're helping people awaken in some way. Now, share with us an example of the most remarkable transformation you've seen from one of your clients so far.
Well, there's this man that I had a session with, and he went through several coaches, even counselors, therapists, and anyone that he went through, no one was able to ever pinpoint exactly what his issues were. And when our first meeting, I was able to pinpoint right away his trauma when it happened. He started crying and and uncovering things that no one ever knew. And even with his genius of what he was wanting to pursue in his life, I was able to uncover all that without him even saying a word, and that opened the trajectory also for him to really focus on, the abundance in his life rather than the 5% that wasn't working. So that, and then another lady who was in the corporate world, able to pinpoint her issues, and she was able to always quit her job that she was in for over a decade and a half.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Now, let's talk more about impact. and this is the theme of this podcast, what would you say is a cause that you're deeply passionate about?
Reducing human suffering.
Mm,
I believe, like, when I think, when I mentioned about that interview with Thich Nhat Hanh and Oprah, I believe that um, is my core thing, to be able to reduce human suffering, and then also to help facilitate the leaders of our future generation. Because let's face it, like, a lot of people are so emotionally inept these days that they can't handle hardship. And I think we need to build people with the character and strong mindset to be able to handle adversities rather than run away from it. Because if we are not able to build up our younger generations with those kind of capacities, then any kind of hardship, they're going to run away from them. And we can't have people to run away from things. We need people to face things and lead us into a better, brighter future.
totally. Absolutely. Listen, I really enjoyed talking to you. But let's start wrapping things up. And there's so many more things that we haven't even touched upon. I think we would need to do a part two because there's so much more that we can cover. So this one, let's wrap things up. To finish off, I'd like to ask you a series of rapid fire questions on advices. Ready?
Mm, yeah.
What would you say has been so far the best piece of advice you've received?
To make yourself an object of study. That's what I got from source. Yeah.
Wow, beautiful. And what would you say has been so far the worst piece of advice you've received?
The worst piece of advice I've ever received is to follow a false prophet.
Mm. And by false prophet, what do you mean?
Well, I mean, that's a term that I've recently started using in the last a couple of years. And a false prophet is someone who portrays the having a particular set of skills,
Mhm.
but they're not in alignment internally in character. So a lot of people fall for that false prophet,
Yeah.
because of their skill, but they don't have the heart.
So that would be, for example, some of those self-proclaimed gurus online,
Mm,
that kind of things, like people that, for example, and I've seen my background is e-commerce, Amazon FBA. I lived in China, very connected in that world. And I see countless days, countless guys that just make $1,000 on Amazon. All of a sudden, you see them launching the course how to make $1 million. They haven't even done it, and it's very easy to see which one are for real, which one are not, because once you're in the game, the industry. It's very easy to call them out. So, are these the kind of people that you call false prophets?
yes, because at the end of the day, it's kind of, in the Bible, they have these ways
Mm-hmm.
of testing the spirits, and you test, prophets and false prophets by their words, listen to their words and watching their actions. And I think I had to practice a lot of discernment and moving away from naivety to understand that. And it's I went through a lot to be coming to this point, but I think to not fully accepting who someone says they are without them being able to show you that's who they are.
I agree. I agree. Now, imagine that you were blessed with a time machine. You can go back in time and sit face to face with an 18-year-old Carol. What's the number one piece of advice you would give to her, knowing all that you know now?
Oh, see, this is a very interesting question you asked, because for me personally, I think it's a useless question because of what I said earlier. You can't teach an experience. And my younger self wouldn't be able to comprehend um, when I say to her, make yourself an object of study, invest in yourself. I would like, hey, yeah, what is she saying? Unless I have this machine like Neo does in the Matrix where they can upload it. But I think that kind of
Yes.
information to go back and tell your younger self that it would be useless. And I think maybe just, be a good person, work on yourself. But I think when I look at my life now, how it ended up, I wouldn't want to go back and change anything because I'm proud and happy and love the person that I am today. And any slight deviation of going back and wanting to change that, I don't see a reason to do that.
Yes, a great point. It's part of the journey. It's we are today as a result of everything you went through. I agree. Now, you're a podcaster.
Mhm.
Imagine that today on your podcast, you have the most special person in your life, which is yourself. So,
Mhm.
interviewing yourself, what's the first question that you want to ask yourself? What's the first question that comes to your mind?
And the first question I always ask, and I would ask myself, is who are you?
Mm. And would your answer would be different than what you said at the start of this podcast?
I would say it would be pretty much the same. But the
Mm-hmm.
only thing that I would add is that I'm constantly growing and evolving because I like to be open to the newness and open to different kind of perceptions. But the only thing that for me that will remain stable is my values and character and my connection to my spiritual guides and God.
Now, my last question and my favorite question to ask is, what is the smallest thing you've done that has had the greatest positive impact in both your life and business? And by small, I don't mean something small. I mean the one thing you've done that has had the biggest impact, positive impact in your life. For me, it's been starting my podcast. What about you?
I would say um, it was actually to value myself.
Mm.
And I think that the moment that I really realized the power that I had was, I wrote this in my book. It was experience that I was at the gym and I was reversing out of the gym parking lot. I looked in my rearview mirror. I'm like, hey, everything's clear. And then I backed out and I hit someone. I reversed into someone. And the person in the car happened to be like an 80-year-old man. And he looked like he was going to have like a heart attack. He was really, looked like he was going to, I had to call the ambulance. And I went to kind of hug him, but he refused it. But then all of a sudden, my internal being kind of prompted me to put my hand on his heart. I put my hand on his heart. I closed my eyes. I did some deep breathing. And then I opened my eyes. And then at that point in time, he was calm and he was happy and he was joyful. And then
Wow.
later, yeah. And later on that afternoon, like I got a call from his granddaughter and she was so thankful and saying like, thank you so much for, helping my grandfather out. He was so overwhelmed by your kind and loving situation or how you approached him. And I think I'm not saying that to brag, but I think it's just a experience of how you can treat other people and how much of big impact that you can have on other people just by the mere fact of being loving and kind. Because had I been a different person, I could have been like, fuck you, why are these old people on the road? You shouldn't be driving anyways, it's your fault, why are you looking? You know what I mean? And but that's not how my heart wanted to respond. My heart wanted to respond by caring and nurturing for him and wanting him to be better.
Would you say that a younger version of you would have had a different reaction to that experience?
um Actually, I don't think I would have done it that way. I would have been profusely sorry, but I
Mm-hmm.
don't know if I would have kind of comfort him the way that I did. Because I didn't feel any I don't know, hesitation doing it when I did it. But I think the younger version of me probably wouldn't cross that line.
Makes sense. That's powerful indeed. At what point, that's just another question that just came to mind while you're talking. I mean, this is fascinating. I can talk to you for hours because it's incredible. Now, at what point in life did you realize that, hey, I have a special gift?
Well,
Despite all the crap going on in my life, I know that I have a special gift connecting to source and all that that other people may not have.
I think it was, when I lost everything in life, after I got arrested, you know, everything when I got out of jail the first time, everything started to hit the fan. Shit started to hit
Mm-hmm.
the fan. I was in real estate. My clients are, started going MIA. The mortgage broker I was working with at that time was stealing my clients. You know what I mean? So it was just like, a big shit
Wow.
storm. And I thought to myself, I never want to help people again. Fuck this. This is what I happens if you help people. But at that moment, I realized I needed to help people even more. And so that's why I wrote my first book, Wake the Fuck Up, A Journey from Death to Awakening. And at that time, the most powerful lesson from that is the ability to know you have a choice.
Oh yes.
And I think when you know you have a choice to build a better life and you go in that direction, and I think that's what life and God and source rewards you with. Maybe it's not what you think, it's not like tied up in a pretty box with a red ribbon, but it allows you to build the capacity to be a stronger person. And I think because of that, it allowed me to release all the stuff in my inner being, which made me a clearer vessel to be able to get these downloads and messages. And I remember a specific time where it was actually activated. I was sitting in a meeting, and I told my friend at that time, is like, oh, my spiritual teacher said if I want to be more advanced, I have to do these psychic readings. I'm like, there's no way in hell I'm doing it. But then, my friend at the time like forced me. He said, sit down and read me. I'm like, no, I'm not going to. So I was sitting down in my chair sweating, but finally I gave up and I closed my eyes and I saw his aura, and I saw all these words and images. And it was just so natural to interpret all of it. So, and I think that was the most amazing experience ever, because it was just so effortless. I never had to do anything. It was just a matter of like tuning in and activating it. So that was really powerful.
Beautiful. So another question about the psychic abilities you have. Is it something that was present in your family, in your mother and other members of your family, or you're the first person in the family that has those abilities?
Well, I think I believe my dad may have embodied it as well, because my mom was telling me a story of how they met, and my dad envisioned meeting this woman with long hair and seeing the actual place that he would meet her and the actual house. He envisioned all of it. So it was really amazing for him to envision it and actually meet the woman that he saw in his dream in the house and everything. So I think it runs in a family, but I think it's being connected to my ancestors and my past lives that are still very much part of me.
Beautiful. That's amazing. We'll definitely have to do a part 2, because there's so much more things that we want to unpack, and all of that is a ton of things coming to my mind. So I'll save those for part 2.
Okay.
Listen, Carol, it's absolutely amazing talking to you. I salute you. You're a true leader with a heart. Love your story. Very powerful, very inspiring. And tell us now, if someone wants to connect with you, what's the best way to do so?
Okay. So they can connect to me at support@carolbanayos.love. And they can also go to Carol or www.carolbanayos.love to, get any book or book a one-on-one coaching with me.
Beautiful. I'll put that in the show notes. So once again, I salute you. You're truly with a heart. Keep shining your light. Keep blessing the world with your presence, with your impact, with your message, with everything you're doing. And we're definitely going to be scheduling a part 2 in a very near future. Stay safe. Stay awesome. God bless you. Have a wonderful weekend ahead of you. Take care.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Very welcome. Bye-bye.